So we're hitting the midsummer market here in Maine, and there's still only about 2 weeks average market time as listings are coming onto market before they're going into escrow. Does that mean that there's not some great opportunities out there for buyers, or is it still crazy like it was last spring? Stick around, we're gonna break this out for you today. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It is your realtor, Nick Isgro with eXp Realty here in Central Maine. Now today, we're gonna break down some of the average days on market because this is kind of like one of those elusive numbers, I think, where we can look at the end of the month, we'll take the average days on market and put it out there, and it seems like everything must be flying off the shelf still. There's not really opportunities. Everything must be just as competitive as it was. Well, that's not really the case, and I wanna break down these numbers for you in several different ways just so you can see that depending on where you are, price point, and looking at some other things other than sales data in the market, you're gonna find there's a lot of opportunities out there right now for buyers who are either just coming to market, getting back in the market, or who have weathered the storm all along the way. Now, before I get into that, I do want to welcome you here to the channel. As you know, on this channel, we cover all things real estate here in the state of Maine, but particularly in the Central Maine market. If that adds value or interest to your process in the real estate market today, do me a favor, go ahead and hit the like button, hit subscribe, knock that little alarm bell. You'll be notified every time I put out new content. All right, guys, so the first thing I want to do is break down average days on market for sold listings. And I'm going to start with sold listings because this is really the data that we're typically going off of at the end of the month. We're looking at average market times for those homes that have been sold. And I think when we get into this, you'll see that it could be a little bit deceiving as we progress through this video, so stick around to the end. Now, the average market time in Kennebec and Somerset counties, today I'm bringing in Somerset County as well. I really want to get a good flavor of the Central Maine area, a lot of the area that I cover and that most of the local realtors here in this area are covering as well, and look at the last 30 days. So it's kind of like a rolling 30-day or roughly data that we're looking at. So sold is 14 days on market. Now, out of 227 properties that have been sold in the last 30 days, 292,000 was the average price point. 268,000 was the median. So I think that's a very representative of kind of what's been really the most popular price point in the housing market over the last couple of years, that sweet spot in the mid to high 200,000s range that we've been getting into, and really where a lot of homes that a couple of years ago that were in the high 100s are ranking right now in value just based off of the supply and demand issues that we've covered here over and over again over the last couple of years. So 14 days on market, 2 weeks on market. Let's start to break this down so you get a little bit of understanding of where that's coming from. So the median price was 268,000, remember that? Let's start breaking down the 200,000 range. In the 200 to $249,999 range, over the last month, there were 35 sales. The average days on market for those to get sold was 10 days on market. Now let's look at the range of houses that were $250,000 up to roughly just shy of 300,000 or 299,999. 44 sales, average days on market, 8 days. So you can see in this price point right here, we have the 200,000 to 300,000 combined. We had almost 100 sales, and the average days on market was 10 days on market, 8 days on market respectively. So that's a big chunk of the sales. Well, how many sales in all did we have? Well, let's remember that number. 227 sales in total across these two counties over the last 30 days. Well, what's going on in some of the other price categories? Well, let's just take a few random examples and talk about them. So let's just look at the $100,000 to the $149,000 range. Well, in there, we had 16 sales. Average days on market was 18 days. So 18 days on market in the lower price point. Well, that's a little bit longer than what we saw in that average group. And as you know, 18 sales is less than 30 something and 40 something sales combined, you know, almost 80 some odd sales. Interestingly enough, if you are in the $100,000 range or less, there was actually an average days on market there of 29 days on market, and respectively 20 sales. So another category you can see where there was a longer average days on market. Let's look into a couple of higher price points and see what's going on there. $500,000 up to $650,000, there's only 5 sales, average days on market, 13 days. $650,000 up to $700,000, 1 sale, 58 days on market. So what I'm trying to point out here is that we saw a squeezed time in where the average price points were. There was obviously a lot more sales. That's where the bulk of the sales are coming from, in that 200 to 300,000 category. And that category is going at much faster market times than most other price categories. So that's where it's really important to kind of step back sometimes and realize that not every house that's on the market, whether it's on the lower end or if you're moving up into the higher end, is going in that average market, because that's where just generally the greatest amount of traffic is. Let's jump over into pending sales. These are sales that are currently in process. These are contracts that are in escrow right now, and see if those numbers tell us anything. In the $200,000 up to $300,000, 39 pending sales. 8 to 13 days on market, average time right there. So you can see, again, we're taking that $200,000 price range category. There's a huge number of sales, or at least in this case, these are contracts, homes going into escrow, and they're going in a very squeezed amount of time. Let's start looking at what happens if we're looking below that price category and if we start looking above that price category. Let's start with $100,000 to $150,000. Right now in that category, these are new contracts in escrow, so these are contracts that most likely came in after the sold data that we just looked at. 39 contracts, 20 days on market. So we can see these times are starting to go out, not only outside of that hot price category market, but it's starting to spread the time frame as well. And we see 39 sales. Well, that's a big number. So there's actually more activity driving into that area right now. So there could be some great opportunities, and people are probably seeing those. People that, feel like they were squeezed out of one category, starting to look at some of these homes that are coming on at more of a value. And that doesn't mean that they're a bad house. It could just be they're in a more rural market, has less sales data, less sales activity, depending on where they are. That happens as well. So you can see, once we step outside of that super hot market, that $200,000 to $300,000 range, activity is actually creeping up in this one. 39 contracts, 20 days on market. All right, now let's look a little bit above that $200,000 range. Let's go to $350,000 to $450,000. Current contracts in escrow. These are pending sales right now. 24 contracts, 18 to 21 days. So you can see we go above that range. All of a sudden, new opportunities are starting to emerge. We're seeing longer market times. We're still seeing strong pricing there, but longer market times means more room for buyers to come in, look at the properties, have a chance to think about the properties, and potentially make contracts on them. I should note, by the way, that for total pending sales right now, 164 contracts in the market right now. Average market time, 19 days. So remember, we just looked at sold homes, and for sold contracts in the last 30 days, we had an average market time of 14 days. Now all of a sudden, for current contracts, the average market time, 19 days, creeping up. In general, just good for you buyers to understand what's happening in the market. Good for you sellers too, because a lot of sellers are getting a little antsy, and if they don't get a contract in the first week or so, they're starting to question what's going on. Should I reduce the price? Is there something wrong with my house? Probably not. Your house is probably fine. Just good to understand what's going on in the market. It's slowing down. There's a little bit of a breathing period for buyers to make their decisions, but ultimately the homes are definitely still selling at very strong prices. All right, guys, here's where the big opportunity is going to come in for you. I think this is fascinating. I was a little surprised by it myself. Kennebec and Somerset County, let's look at what's currently active listings on the market. Means they're not under contract, they're not sold, they're sitting on the market, because everything's going at like 14 days, right? Let's take a look. So right now there's currently 597 properties, active listings across Kennebec and Somerset County. Get this, the average market time right now for homes that are currently on the market at an average price point of $369,000, 61 days. Wow, that means nothing's selling, right? Well, not really. We see what's moving on the market. We know that inventory is increasing, people are taking their time. Let's look in that popular price category, $200,000 up to $300,000. This is the sweet spot. Let's see what's going on in that sweet spot market where most of you buyers out there are looking right now. In Kennebec and Somerset County, currently on 163 active listings between $200,000 and $300,000. Average days on market for these listings that are still here, 42 to 51 days. Wow, that's huge, guys. That's a big difference in numbers as we're looking at that. So let's break down what this means, okay? So there's a lot of homes that are currently on the market, and a lot of them are sitting for longer periods of time than we are used to over the last couple of years. In fact, this is, I dare say, getting back to kind of normal market activity. We see that if homes are on the market and they're priced correctly and they're in the right area, they're probably going to go pretty quick, as we saw was happening in sold and even pending. We see in the pended contracts, those days on market are stretching out a little bit, but they're not taking up all of the entire market surplus. And remember last month what we saw right here in Kennebec County. We saw an increase of new listings, we saw a decrease of pending contracts, and we saw sales go sideways. Overall, the overall inventory was bigger than it was the month before. So that's where we are in the market. And so, as I said in the video that we just put out on Tuesday, the market is still demanding very high prices because still overall we have less than 1 month of overall inventory in the market. But as we start looking at different price categories and as we look at how this market is progressing, what everything shows is that we're starting to extend market times beyond what it was, a year ago when we were telling you that your house was going to go on the market and be off within a few days. Disclaimer, that's still happening on a lot of homes. If you're in Waterville or Winslow in town and you've got a well-priced Cape that's close to all the amenities, it's probably going to go real quick. If you have a house that's on the lake in Oakland, again, in kind of like that mid $300,000 to $400,000 range, those kind of properties are still going to go. Eventually, everything's going to go. What we're seeing though is definitely some opportunities here. So if you're a seller, what does this mean for you? It mean your house isn't going to sell, the prices are crashing? No, prices are strong. A lot of sellers are rejecting contracts. They are willing to negotiate a little bit more, but they're still basically getting asking price or just below asking price. That's what we're seeing. It just might be a few more weeks. So if your home does not sell in the first 10 days, probably nothing wrong with it. You're well on the way to getting to where you need to be. Just make sure you work with your realtor to understand your market specific. Look at the competition, see what the competition is doing, see where you're priced compared to the competition, and all should be well. If you're a buyer, what does this mean? It means that you probably don't need to rush out there the day something's listed and be like, oh my goodness, we're not gonna get this unless we offer $30,000 over asking price. That's kind of done, actually, I think. It's not that there's not going to be rare examples of that happening. It's not that there's not some homes that are still selling in 1 or 2 days. There are. I listed a home just a couple of weeks ago. The night I listed it, I had it under contract for $10,000 over asking price. What I'm saying is it's much more rare right now. And so for buyers, there's a growing opportunity for you to get out in a bigger market, to have more options to find the home that you want to move into, the home that you like. You might not have to settle for something that you don't necessarily love like you might have had to if you were looking for a year ago, or at least you don't have to be quite as patient as you did at that time. So I hope this information was helpful to you guys. I really am going to try to keep on this because the market is changing, but there's tons of opportunities out there, both for buyers, for sellers, and even investors, which we will talk about in a future video. But we hear a lot about market times and what's going on in the market, and it seems like when you look at the media, it's either this is the hottest, craziest market ever, or the sky is falling. It's really neither of those cases. I think things are getting back to a little bit more normalized activity, still a super strong market, but also a great time to buy. If you guys are in the market right now, I would love to hear from you. Go ahead, drop a comment below, tell me what your experience has been. As always, if you have any questions, if there's any way I could assist you with your real estate needs, please reach out. All of my contact information is in the link below on this post. That's it for this video, guys, and until I drop again, I'll see you next time.